captured the waves of emotion, of the ups and downs in the organizing, but are there things that weren't captured in the sense that, you know, what was able to keep them going as a group? Because, you kind of show it sort of a bit the friction by the end, but what kept them going at the hard time to really to break out, to get that victory that you think was so important to bring across to all of us, to audiences everywhere and to Amazon workers everywhere?
Yeah, I first just want to say thank you so much. This is an incredible room, and it really is very meaningful to be here with all of you. So, I think they would say themselves, it was a movement built on people power. So they derived inspiration and motivation from each other. It was a very social organism. And, I think that for me, what I observed and what was, I was most kind of moved by this idea that the Amazon Labor Union in Staten Island, they created something that had never existed at that particular work site, which was a community of care, a community of love. It started with just asking coworkers, how are you doing? How is your day? And it would go from there, and they were able to break through this kind of culture of fear, this culture of retaliation, this sense of like workers in the beginning not even wanting to talk about the word union. Like they would, let alone forget about taking the literature, right? Like they workers just blow by them. They set up a tent by the bus stop, and they, were there almost a full year, day in, day out, all weather. And it was incredible to watch them break through and reach people by just, asking questions and then trying to support each other as best they could. And so I think that like seeing that kind of like connection and the spark happen, and then watching their fellow organizers lean into the mission at hand was, I think, how they sustained each other.
And I know the film is much more about the organizing than what it's like to work inside Amazon, but what is it for people, and not in a voyeuristic way, but for people who don't, Amazon is, people might conceive that Amazon might be like any other workplace, or have another extreme view that Amazon is, really this kind of dystopian kind of nightmare of work, which it might be. And what is it that people don't, that you think that people really need to understand? Why is it so important? What's so wrong at Amazon at its core that people need to understand? It's important for Amazon workers, but also for everybody who's working now. What it, the conditions at work, don't have to be exhaustive, but
Amazon represents kind of the pinnacle of racial capitalism as we know it today. They have set out to define the future of work and the present of work as we understand it. The practices that you see at a place like Amazon, and it's not limited to Amazon, have historical resonances to slavery, to the carceral state, to policing problems that we see throughout the world. I spent 7 years prior to this project getting to know intimately in New York City minority whistleblower, active duty NYPD cops who were trying to expose the NYPD for its discriminatory racist practices. And so they were collecting evidence and trying to build a different kind of collective organizing unit. The complaints that they experienced, right, they were being pressured to arrest, summons, and stop and frisk their community members, were for productivity quotas. They complained about a fear of retaliation and just an essential culture of fear. These are the same complaints we would observe the organizers in Staten Island talking to workers about, that they were afflicted by. And so, I think this idea that, the police state, the carceral state, Amazon, the economic extractive nature of these, companies. It's not by accident that these are all similar complaints that we're hearing.
My name is Ibrahim Sahari. I am now working at Immigrant Workers Centre, and I was working at Amazon for 2 years, and they fired me because I tried to organize workers. So I wanna speak about the work condition at Amazon, because this part I think I didn't see enough at the movie. Work condition at Amazon, the model for the future for everywhere, every workplace around the world. So this very important to for us to see how this work conditions, the worst everywhere in all kind of work. As I said, I worked there for 2 years, and I became like a zombie. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't read, I couldn't watch TV, I couldn't communicate with my family, with my friends. Completely zombie. This the Amazon model, and this model will be everywhere soon in our future.
Amazon is a weird place, yes. There's distinctive, specific aspects to the work, like the way they use technology, to surveil you and your productivity, just the attitude of like the whole smiles everywhere, the really weird positivity around it. Like there's something very specific about working at Amazon, but there's something universal too about working at Amazon and working in like an industrial setting. It's just that they're very aggressive about it. They're very aggressive about the way they put in place new technologies, about the way they're very upfront about, yes, there is an algorithm, and yes, the algorithm is like checking everything you do and like making decisions, essentially. There's this aspect, but you find that very often, like it's a universal aspect of working in a shop, in a factory, you know. The problem with Amazon fundamentally is that it's run by people at the top who are only motivated by profits. So, of course they don't care, like about the individual experience of getting hurt, of getting your back hurt, and being forced to go on leave, and the seasonal workers that are getting fired in a cycle. Of course they don't care. But it's because of that universality of it, the fact that you find this everywhere, that like I saw the movie and I was like, yep, that's exactly it. Those are my coworkers. That's the same. It's the same issues. It's the same problems. Same faces. It's the same look in the eyes at the end of a shift. But it's because it's the same problems everywhere that we have a union movement, right? That like because it's the same problems that the people at the top they create by this mad drive to profits, that we have a basis to organize and to resist these tactics, these ways of extracting profit that are going to come, regardless if it's Amazon or if it's some other company. If you reach that level of development, you are going to try and fuck over your employees. It's just the way it goes. they're just very good at it.
One of the issues that that the workers talked about, being constantly sore, and something that we see at the center is like health and safety, right? Like the level of injuries and the kinds of injuries. And I think people don't really understand the magnitude of the problem of health and safety inside a place like Amazon.
Le nombre de blessures est insane. On a 127 blessures qui sont actifs à la CNSST actuellement. Donc ça veut dire qu'il y a beaucoup de blessures de personnes qui ne sont juste pas allées voir les employeurs, qui ne sont pas allés le reporter. Puis ça, c'est sans parler des anciennes blessures qui ont déjà été résolues. Puis ça, c'est 127 blessures depuis le début de cette année. Ça, c'était il y a 2 mois, donc on est peut-être rendu à 150. C'est pas le même.
Sur combien de personnes?
On est entre 250 et 300 personnes. Donc.
250 à 300 personnes sur le site d'XT4 et ils ont 126 blessures en 10 mois.
Exactement.
So almost 50% injury rate.
Donc, en ce moment, on essaye de notre possible de faire le plus de casework pour aller chercher leurs droits, puis qu'ils puissent être payés. Parce que donc à Amazon, en plus de vous blesser à Amazon, vous allez sûrement ne pas être payé dans votre livre. Ça m'est arrivé. Moi, je viens juste de finir 3 mois de blessure.
Moi, je vais pouvoir témoigner d'un accident long terme chez Amazon. Je me suis blessée il y a plus de 2 ans au dos. Je suis toujours en attente de mon audience puisqu'Amazon a contesté mon accident de travail, conteste toutes les procédures en place pour mes soins. Donc, c'est toujours en attente. Il faut savoir que parmi tous les travailleurs que j'ai côtoyés, ça fait plus de 3 ans que je travaille pour Amazon, que je fais partie également de l'Union des travailleuses et travailleurs accidentés et malades, qui est un organisme à but non lucratif qui aide les travailleurs non syndiqués à faire reconnaître leurs droits auprès de la CNSST et de leurs employeurs, ainsi que je participe au CTI et au niveau de la CSN pour la syndicalisation des entrepôts d'Amazon. Donc, tous les travailleurs que j'ai rencontrés, la majorité ont des blessures qui ont été reconnues ou non reconnues, des blessures que l'employeur a mis tout en place, l'employeur étant Amazon, a mis tout en place pour qu'elles ne soient pas reconnues par la CNSST. En disant aux travailleurs que non, ils n'ont pas à faire de déclaration. En disant aux travailleurs, prends des congés, on t'offre 2 semaines de congés non payés, bien évidemment. Donc, comme ça, tu vas pouvoir te reposer. Et puis, quand le travailleur revient, quand le travailleur a de nouveau mal, il va chez le médecin, quand il arrive à avoir un rendez-vous médical. Et là, on lui dit, mais c'est trop tard, vous ne pourrez pas faire reconnaître votre accident de travail. Et le travailleur se trouve, en fait, avec une blessure qu'il ne peut pas soigner parce qu'il n'a pas une paye suffisante pour assurer ses soins lui-même, parce qu'il n'a pas le temps. Souvent, les travailleurs de chez Amazon cumulent 2 emplois, travaillent 60 heures semaine, des fois laissent leurs enfants seuls chez eux pour pouvoir venir travailler chez Amazon. Et suite à ça, c'est des blessures qui restent, qui deviennent de plus en plus lourdes à gérer au quotidien, et avec des personnes qui n'ont pas les moyens de se soigner, n'ont pas les moyens financiers, n'ont pas les moyens, les connaissances, parce qu'on parle d'une majorité de travailleurs issus d'immigration. Donc ils se rapportent à ce qu'ils ont vécu dans leur pays d'origine, ils ne savent pas comment fonctionne le système au Canada, et au Québec en particulier. L'employeur joue de ça. Il va contester systématiquement toute blessure. Il va commencer par dénigrer le travailleur. Il n'a pas fait son échauffement comme il faut, il n'a pas travaillé comme il faut, il n'a pas suivi les procédures comme il faut. Alors que le travailleur, lui, la seule chose qu'il fait, c'est de se dire « Oh mon Dieu, il faut que j'arrive à suivre le rythme qu'on me demande. » Le rythme qu'on demande à un travailleur dans l'entrepôt où je travaille, c'est 120 boîtes traitées par heure. Le rythme moyen de travail, quand moi je me suis blessée, j'étais à plus de 200 boîtes traitées par heure. Imaginez déplacer 3 boîtes par minute de chez Amazon. 3 boîtes par minute, sachant qu'il faut les scanner 2 fois. Et trouver la bonne palette aussi. Donc ça, c'est la situation que vivent les travailleurs au quotidien. Les blessures sont permanentes. C'est permanent. Les gens ont mal. On a un distributeur d'ibuprofène dans le bâtiment. Wouh! Ils en sont gentils, ils ont rajouté les antiacides pour pas qu'on se brûle l'estomac. C'est des grands princes quand même, soyons honnêtes. Donc ça, quand on a mal, on va nous donner une petite poche de glace. Repose-toi 5 minutes. Puis, si tu as encore mal, bah, rentre chez toi, mais tu ne seras pas payé. Donc, avons-nous les moyens, à 20 $ de l'heure, de rentrer chez nous? Non, on n'a pas les moyens.
Dans le film, il a dit quelque chose à un moment donné, Chris Smalls, qui est vraiment qui va au cœur de la question, là. Si tu veux organiser un milieu de travail, c'est une question de relation de confiance avec les gens. Tu peux pas syndiquer un milieu de travail, tu peux pas organiser un milieu de travail si tu n'as pas ces relations-là. Parce que au final, ce que tu essaies de faire, c'est créer un outil, un outil démocratique et collectif avec lequel les gens vont pouvoir changer. Ils vont pouvoir. C'est une question de pouvoir collectif, là, dans le fond. C'est un syndicat. Fait que ce que tu as besoin, c'est ces relations-là. C'est la fondation. La base de l'expérience de créer un syndicat qui a du bon sens, c'est bâtir ces relations de confiance-là. Parce que c'est avec ça que tu peux challenge une grosse machine comme Amazon. Si tu as t'as des gens qui se font confiance, tu as une bonne équipe, sky is the limit. Là.
I mean, I can't speak for Canada, I'll speak for the US. We've seen a dramatic decline in union density over the last 50 years. So it's been very problematic. I think I would guess there's less generational memory of what it means to be a part of a union. So I think for a lot of these workers, that they were trying to organize with, there was really like little sense of like what the material value would be of being even a part of a union, right? I mean, I think in the US we've seen a tremendous propaganda war, and Amazon has been winning because as we all know, they devote millions and millions of dollars into the propaganda around anti-unionization. I mean, I think speaking to some things that I think you guys were talking about, like many Amazon facilities have somewhere around 3 to 12 times higher injury rates than like industries like logging. If you can imagine that, like that doesn't make any sense, right? So obviously, because they're churning through the labor force in such a dramatic numbers, I mean, of course, the propaganda is fierce. And so it's a war of competing narratives. But I mean, to one thing, I think, and I know you guys have sectoral bargaining issues yourself, but at least you have sectoral bargaining. We in the US do not. So there's no industry-wide collective bargaining. I mean, it's like to literally fight warehouse by warehouse, job site by job site, Starbucks coffee shop by coffee shop, makes for a tremendously uphill battle.
Obviously, we need to scale up. That's strategically, it's necessary because, yes, we're in an advantageous position in Quebec because of the labor laws. We have to remember, though, the state doesn't the reason we have these labor laws isn't because the Quebec government is nice and full of. They're not gifts. It's a compromise because they don't want riots. It's different. But it's something to exploit, though. So there's that. But ultimately, the working class, where does our strength derive from? It's from the fact that we are the ones who work, implying we can stop work, like we can stop working. The strike is our ultimate. It's the tactic, it's the tool we have, like ultimately. So what we need and what the comrades in New York need and what every union needs is balance of power, like leverage. So how many warehouses you need to achieve that? Guess we'll see.
So yeah, to answer your question, the workers that we collaborated with in filming, they were engaged in this practice of collecting evidence for unfair labor practices. So a lot of ULPs were filed. I don't know what the comparable thing in Canada is. So yeah, so they were collecting evidence all the time of any kind of violation of labor law that they could account for. And so with that filming practice came footage that then we, with their permission, actually licensed from them. And so we treated them as, in a way, as an extension of our efforts by, basically, asking to purchase footage to be able to use. Obviously, we were engaged in a very close relationship in terms of documenting them. So they kind of, over time, they sort of understood the kinds of things that, as filmmakers, we were attempting to communicate to the wider public about the working conditions and, what it is like for the organizers. So, they had a sense of also the things we were looking for as well. But it was all the workers that were in there. And it's worth noting, it was very intentional to not get Amazon's approval for this film. So it was an absolutely unsanctioned documentary. I don't think, if we were to sort of collaborate with Amazon and get their official permission, you could imagine what the propaganda piece would be and the kind of access we would get. So we wanted to make sure that this was entirely independent, that there was no sense of compromise as journalists and filmmakers.
Tous les travailleurs, il y a toujours quelque chose qui fait que c'est difficile, que tu es dans une situation difficile, que il y a toujours une bonne raison d'avoir peur de perdre ta job. C'est juste que dans notre situation au Canada, les politiques migratoires font en sorte que non seulement la vie coûte cher, tu as besoin d'un job et tout, mais en plus, tu dois naviguer un système d'immigration qui n'a pas de fucking bon sens, qui est bureaucratique à mort, puis qui crée comme une... on a toute une classe de travailleurs au Canada maintenant qui n'ont pas les mêmes droits politiques que les travailleurs citoyens ou les résidents permanents. Bon, à partir... Le dernier mot m'a fâché sur les politiques migratoires, là, éditoriales, mais pour répondre à ta question sur comment ça affecte l'organisation syndicale en tant que telle, c'est sûr que ça l'affecte dans le sens que ça fait en sorte que si quelqu'un a... si quelqu'un perd son emploi et ça le met dans une situation particulièrement difficile, c'est sûr que ça fait peur. Mais au final, c'est ça le point que je voulais faire tantôt, ce qu'il faut que tu fasses, c'est la même chose que tu fais dans n'importe quelle campagne de syndicalisation, puis c'est bâtir une relation de confiance, puis montrer que le syndicat, c'est l'outil qui va permettre d'améliorer ta vie. Puis qu'on ne syndique pas juste parce que on veut un petit peu plus d'argent. On syndique parce que la job n'a pas d'allure. Puis si tu restes là, sans syndicat, tu vas te blesser éventuellement, tu vas perdre ta job, ça va être de la merde pareil. Fait, je vais juste parler des Tchadiens. Parce qu'il y a une grosse communauté à Laval, c'est une communauté tchadienne. C'est une récente vague d'immigration à Montréal. Puis c'est beaucoup des réfugiés politiques qui sont partis à cause de la guerre civile au Tchad qu'il y a eu quelques années, puis qui fuient la dictature. C'est des gens qui sont vraiment motivés par un profond sentiment de justice. Il y en a plein qui étaient comme connectés avec un mouvement, le mouvement de l'opposition démocratique là-bas. Fait que, oui, ça peut, ça peut affecter la syndicalisation, mais en même temps, ça apporte comme plein d'autres affaires qui vont peut-être aider aussi. C'est quelque chose qu'il faut que tu tiennes en... Pour résumer là, mon blabla, là, c'est quelque chose que tu dois tenir en tête et que tu dois tenir compte des spécificités de chaque communauté, de chaque groupe social que tu organises dans un syndicat, mais c'est pas insurmontable, c'est vraiment pas... c'est loin d'être insurmontable. Si les gens veulent se syndiquer, on va se syndiquer.
Sur le site sur lequel je travaille, donc, nous avons beaucoup d'étudiants de Concordia, justement, donc, qui viennent travailler, donc des étudiants indiens qui sont sur un visa étudiant. Nombreux de ces étudiants souhaitent rester par la suite au Canada et effectivement, en fait, dans le frein qu'ils ont à la syndicalisation, c'est la peur de ne pas obtenir leur résidence permanente. Donc ça, c'est vraiment quelque chose, ils se posent la question. Donc, il faut les rassurer beaucoup que la syndicalisation est un processus qui est confidentiel. Donc c'est un travail vraiment de tous les jours. Les personnes qui sont dans les entrepôts, dans les divers entrepôts d'Amazon, pas que le mien, passent beaucoup de temps dans leur journée à rassurer leurs collègues pour dire que la syndicalisation est confidentielle. Donc le syndicat ne dévoilera pas sa liste de personnes au gouvernement. Donc mais c'est un frein, effectivement, et notamment les dernières annonces qui ont eu lieu cet été on a senti une grande vague de peur parmi les étudiants donc, qui sont en visa temporaire. Donc ça.
So there's, out of Progressive International, there's this Make Amazon Pay coalition, which is more broader than sort of just labor organizing. So talking about the impacts of Amazon on the environment, on taxes and whatnot. And they do a global day of action every Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is outside of Amazon Prime Day, Amazon's biggest day in terms of revenue for peak season. So, I mean, you can look up Make Amazon Pay, but I think at this point, while boycotts can be a powerful tool, I mean, it's like I think Amazon's reached the point where it's like Walmart or Coke. You can't really dent it in that way when, 50% of everything that people buy online is on Amazon, right? That's huge.
My warehouse processes 55,000 packages per day. It's a lot of packages to boycott.
And was that? I have one last question for Stephen, actually, and it relates to the organizing point. And I mean, because especially in a place like JFK8, that's so enormous, right? I mean, it's like a city or something. It's like, over 8,000 workers. And there's like bits of this in the film that you see, and it goes to the immigration question. Sort of, how did ALU sort of negotiate, or almost this coalition, this multiracial coalition, where when we talk about not divisions, but like in terms of to bring people together, maybe with different statuses, with different perceptions of racialization, with different, to bring all of that together must have also been a really complicated task, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most impressive and maybe ambitious things about the Amazon Labor Union's organizing was that they kind of recognized this idea, this very contemporary idea, that working class struggle has to be defined beyond just economic position, right? That it has to encompass a diversity of identity and social position and political ideology and demographics, and so that, you know, it was a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-class movement that defined the DNA of this organization. Along with that, right, so like the diversity, the different kinds of like ideological thought, strategic thought defined the group. It also bound the group, and it also was part of like the fundamental tensions that emerged too, right? So I think, you know, that which made it diverse and beautiful also was the thing that they had to kind of learn to hold together. And I think admittedly they also knew that they were bound to lose people, that not everybody was going. The union is, the great ambition of the union was to hold as many different kinds of people as it could, knowing maybe full well that they couldn't hold everybody. And so I think that's where you sort of, people always ask, well, about Nat's vote no decision by the end. And I think, you know, this is sort of the hard reality of that. Like, you have to face that not everybody is going to sort of be able to, is going to be consolidated in this very fast-paced organizing that is receiving the full brunt force of Amazon's anti-unionization resources. So I think that, you know, I guess to answer your question though, I think it was a really incredible effort to hold all of those different kinds of people within the union, and actually is the reason why they were able to be successful. I just wish, you know, as we were watching it unfold, you know, it was like, you know, we were there almost every day with them at times, and I wish they had the ability to take the time to talk about the things that were, the tensions that were rising, right? I mean, there was never a moment to even take a breath and check in with each other. And so, I mean, we've seen this problem arise in organizing for decades, right? That we don't yet understand how intersectional organizing and collectivity works yet. And that's a really big problem, because that is where workers win, when we understand and get better at intersectionality.